President Yoon today departed for South America to attend this year's APEC and G20 summits, highlighting the strategic importance of the region. It was a big day for thousands of college entrance exam takers nationwide. Office hours were pushed back, public transportation was expanded, and this year there was a high number of those retaking the tests, as more admissions are allowed at medical schools. The nation's major game fair kicks off in Busan. What stands out this year? Brand new releases and unique content. It's November 14th, 8 p.m. in Seoul. This is Newscenter. Thank you for joining us. I'm Yoon Min. The South Korean president is heading to Peru and Brazil to partake in multilateral platforms aimed at promoting global security and economic stability. Our top office correspondent Kim Do-yeon covers the agenda ahead.
As President Yoon has embarked on a trip to Latin America for the first time since his inauguration, President Yoon says the visit, quote, is highly significant in the expansion of Korea's vision as a global pivotal state towards the Latin American region. The president was speaking in an interview with EFE on Thursday as he also highlighted the growing strategic importance of the region, citing the recent rise of protectionism and worsening instability in global supply chains. Also during the interview, President Yoon addressed North Korea's recent deployment of troops to Russia, saying, quote, if they both do not stop their dangerous military adventure, we're prepared to implement appropriate effective measures, including strengthening support for Ukraine in cooperation with our allies and like-minded countries. He's set to use the two upcoming summits, APEC in Peru and the G20 in Brazil, to gain support against the military cooperation between Moscow and Pyongyang.
President Yoon will stress the importance of maintaining a rules-based international order for a sustainable future during the APEC and G20 summits and emphasize the need for international solidarity in addressing military cooperation between Russia and North Korea.
As for his schedule, Yoon's set to land in Lima, Peru on Thursday evening local time and starts his official engagements for APEC on Friday with the APEC Business Advisory Council and CEO Summit. The first session is on the same day under the theme Empower, Include, Grow. The APEC Summit comes as South Korea is set to host next year's APEC Summit in Gyeongju, Gyeongsangbuk-do Province.
President Yoon will emphasize South Korea's commitment as next year's APEC chair to leading discussions on fostering a free and stable trade and investment environment.
On November 16th, the APEC Leaders Retreat will wrap up the APEC schedule before Yoon's official visit to Peru begins with a summit with Peruvian President Dina Boluarte, which will be followed by a joint press conference. After this, President Yoon will take off for Brazil to join the G20 summit in Rio de Janeiro on the 17th. On the 18th, he will start his G20 engagements with Session 1, where Yoon will address global hunger and poverty, while during Session 3 on the 19th, he will deliver a speech on clean energy. Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News.
And on the sidelines of the APEC summit, President Yoon is scheduled to sit down with his counterparts from the U.S. and Japan amid threats posed by North Korea and uncertainty given the upcoming transition in leadership at the White House. Our correspondent Suneung takes a closer look.
President Yoon will hold a trilateral summit with US President Joe Biden and Japanese Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba on Friday on the sidelines of the APEC conference in Lima, Peru. Seoul's presidential office on Thursday confirmed the highly anticipated meeting has been arranged, as the three sides look to reaffirm their agreements made at Camp David last year to deter North Korea's nuclear and missile threat and to jointly handle security and economic challenges in the region. The leaders will meet amid concerns that the incoming Trump administration in the US may not maintain the trilateral partnership, and as tensions rise over North Korea's deployment of troops to aid Russia's war against Ukraine.
What is deeply concerning about North Korea-Russia cooperation is that it could spiral into a worse, unforeseen scenario if Russia transfers advanced military technology, including nuclear weapons, to North Korea. Beyond energy and food supplies, Pyongyang's security threat to the world will reach unprecedented scale.
Yoon is likely to meet separately with Ishiba on Saturday, according to Japanese media, after Ishiba reinstated his leadership as PM. The two leaders are expected to build on their brief talks last month in Southeast Asia on preserving their trilateral cooperation with Washington and enhancing bilateral ties ahead of the 60th anniversary of normalizing diplomatic relations next year. Seoul is also trying to coordinate a bilateral summit with Chinese President Xi Jinping during Yoon's 8-day trip to Latin America. Yoon and Xi have only met briefly during the G20 summit in 2022 and at APEC last year in San Francisco. Their first sit-down meeting would signal a major step towards improving bilateral ties, which have been frayed in recent years amid the US and China's rivalry in the region. Observers suggest that as Pyongyang increases its military ties with Moscow and appears to act independently of Beijing's influence, it's in South Korea and China's interest to cooperate.
Early in the Yoon administration, there was a strong focus on the U.S. and Japan creating a distance with China. However, China's recent mention of visa exemptions could be a signal of its willingness to improve ties and resolve certain issues. In my view, trilateral cooperation between South Korea, the U.S. and Japan is crucial. Managing relations with China and Russia, particularly with North Korea's complexities, is also necessary.
Although South Korea and the geopolitical security environment are different, so should benchmark countries that are skilled at balanced diplomacy, such as UAE. We will have to observe how the incoming U.S. administration responds and China's discomfort over the North Korea-Russia situation and their future course of action. Each country will see their strategic considerations grow.
The biggest question is whether Yoon will meet former, now returning US President Donald Trump while he's on the other side of the Pacific. In their first phone call last week, Yoon and Trump agreed to meet in person soon to discuss various issues, including North Korea in detail. A Yoon official says the two sides have been communicating closely, but the incoming administration is currently focusing on domestic matters. Suneung, Arirang News.
Over in Washington, President-elect Trump has returned to the Oval Office for the first time in almost 4 years to meet with President Biden. Unlike then, the two agreed on a smooth transition of power. Choi Min-jung reports.
U.S. President Joe Biden and President-elect Donald Trump met at the White House on Wednesday for the first time since the presidential election last week. The two sat down for nearly 2 hours at the Oval Office. Both the incumbent and incoming president called for a smooth transition of power.
Well, Mr. President-elect and former President, thank you. Donald, congratulations.
Politics is tough, and it's in many cases not a very nice world, but it is a nice world today, and I appreciate it very much.
The Oval Office visit upholds the tradition of a peaceful transfer of power, a gesture Trump declined to extend to Biden in 2020 after falsely claiming Biden had not won the election. At the time, Trump filed lawsuits on voter fraud and was accused of helping incite a mob that attacked the U.S. Capitol. Despite this history, however, Wednesday's meeting was rather cordial. The two are expected to have discussed U.S. foreign policy, the logistics of handing over power, and the ongoing wars in Ukraine and the Middle East. The meeting comes as Trump continues his appointment of key roles in the upcoming cabinet and administration. On Wednesday, he named Senator Marco Rubio of Florida as his nominee for Secretary of State, Republican Representative Matt Gaetz of Florida to serve as his Attorney General, and Tulsi Gabbard, a former Democratic member of Congress and presidential candidate, to serve as his Director of National Intelligence. Choi Min-jung, Arirang News.
The $1 exchange rate drops for the first time in 4 trading days following verbal intervention from South Korea's foreign exchange authorities. The won closed at around 14.05 on Thursday, 1.5 Korean won lower than the previous day. Finance Minister Choi Sang-mok vowed to keep the market stable with tangible countermeasures in the event of severe fluctuations. This comes as the Korean currency broke past the 1,401 mark against the U.S. dollar amid the fallout from Donald Trump's election victory. Meanwhile, the benchmark Kospi rebounded after 5 consecutive trading days of losses, while Samsung Electronics shares fell below the 50,001 mark for the first time in 4.5 years. Korea's auto industry noted a strong performance in October with on-year increases in output, sales at home, and shipments overseas. Kim Jong-sil explains what's driving this trend.
South Korea's auto industry achieved what officials are calling a triple plus last month, with October seeing increases in production, domestic sales, and exports compared to a year ago. It's the first time in 16 months that all 3 areas have shown growth at the same time. The Ministry of Trade, Industry and Energy reported on Friday that South Korea's auto production reached 368,000 units in October, which is almost an 8% rise from last year. This was helped by an extra workday compared to last year and new model launches, including Kia's EV3 and K8, KG Mobility's Ection, and Renault Korea's Grand Koleos. Domestic sales were up too, with 146,000 units sold, which is a 3.1% increase from last year. It's the first time in 11 months that demand has picked up locally. Key reasons for this boost include the debut of Renault Korea's Grand Koleos and record sales of hybrid cars, which reached 49,000 units for the month. Exports rose by 5.5%, hitting a record $6.2 billion for October. Hybrid car exports were especially strong, surging 80% to $1.1 billion, marking another all-time high. Industry experts say this demand for hybrid vehicles is fueling the strong export numbers. Altogether, from January through October, auto exports hit a record total of $59.1 billion. Amid global market uncertainty, the government says it's working closely with the industry to keep this momentum going. It's encouraging efforts like the Korea Sale Festa this month, hoping the export growth can help lift domestic sales as well. Kim Jong-sil, Arirang News.
The plan to impose taxes on financial investment, which has been unpopular among investors, is set to be scrapped after years of delay and debate. For this topic, our finance correspondent Moon Hae-ryun joins us in the studio. Hae-ryun, what exactly is the financial investment income tax?
So it's pretty much exactly how it sounds. The financial investment income tax is a tax that imposes levies on profits made on financial investments. And this includes domestic stock investments above 50 million Korean won, roughly $35,000 or 2.5 million won, just under $1,800 from overseas stocks, bonds and funds. A 20% tax rate will be applied to the portion of profits exceeding their respective thresholds, and the rate increases to 25% for annual profits exceeding 300 million won. This tax was passed into law under a bipartisan agreement back in 2020 in an attempt to create a more equitable tax system. Currently in place is the capital gains tax system, where only large shareholders holding shares worth 50 billion won or more in a single stock or owning a 1 to 4% stake in the company are subject to the capital gains tax. There's also the securities transaction tax, which is levied on the act of trading stocks rather than on capital gains. The securities transaction tax rate has been gradually decreasing in recent years as it was to be phased out for the financial income investment tax.
And walk us through the timeline and why this plan is being revoked before it's being implemented.
So originally it was set to be implemented in 2023, but its implementation was pushed back to 2025 as the tax was met with strong backlash from investors. And the Yoon administration pushed to repeal the law in order to stabilize the stock market. And just last week, the Democratic Party expressed support. Investors in South Korea worried that the financial investment income tax would discourage active participation in the stock market, leading to reduced trading volumes and potentially higher market volatility. As a new tax is imposed, individual investors are inevitably resistant to taxes, and there are concerns that large investors who influence supply and demand will sell off their holdings to avoid the financial investment income tax, leading to a decline in stock prices. Individual shareholders also felt that it favored institutions and foreign investors, as they would not be subject to the financial investment income tax. Although foreign investors pay taxes to their own governments according to the double taxation avoidance agreements, they could be indirectly benefiting from the financial investment income tax due to the reduction of the transaction tax rates.
If we eliminate the financial income tax, then the government may have no choice but to maintain the transactions tax for revenue purposes.
The administrative procedures of the financial investment income tax were also a burden on individual investors, as taxes would be withheld in advance and investors would then have to file a final tax return with the tax office to receive a refund for any overpaid taxes. President Yoon further claimed that it was important to abolish the financial investment income tax before South Korea's government bonds are listed in the prestigious World Government Bond Index next year. Experts say that this is to maximize the benefits.
The government is using the opportunities presented by Korea joining the WGBI, which affects the bond market only, to also get some attention on the stock market, and abolishing the financial investment income tax is perhaps one way of doing it. But there are some...
And how are markets responding?
So immediately following the news, the country's benchmark Kospi jumped by more than 2%, and the tech-heavy Kosdaq recorded its biggest rise in 3 months as it surged by 3.43%. Here's what an expert said about why the Kosdaq can anticipate more gains from the repeal.
With a large concentration of individual investors, the Kosdaq market is particularly sensitive to changes in investment taxes. The repeal of the financial investment income tax has significantly boosted the attractiveness of the Kosdaq market for individual investors.
The domestic financial market has been unstable following the U.S. presidential election, so this latest move is expected to help reduce some uncertainties.
Domestic individual investors had been pulling back from the stock market, and some funds were flowing overseas. The repeal of the financial investment income tax has significantly reduced these uncertainties.
All right, thanks, Yoon, for the report.
Thank you for having me.
Here in Korea, most high school seniors and graduates took the annual college entrance exam today. Our An Song-jin went out to see and talked to some of the test takers about how they felt after the long day.
Students began to pour out after the 9-hour marathon. The National College Entrance Exam, also known as Suneung, had come to an end. It's been a long journey for these test takers who finished with relief, concern, or excitement.
I think it was a bit easy overall. It's out of my hands now.
I'm just going to play basketball all day. I'm happy that the exam is over. I just want to have fun with my friends now.
This year, more than 520,000 students took the test at nearly 1,300 test-taking centers across the country, which is nearly 20,000 more than last year. And this year saw the highest number of people retaking the test in the past 21 years. It's the first Suneung since the expansion of the medical school admissions quota, and as more students are expected to apply to med school, this may have led to the increase in test takers this year. With these extra students, competition was expected to be more intense with more difficult questions to separate them. However, the head of the examination committee said otherwise.
Based on data starting from last year, we tried to adjust the difficulty of the test, especially for test retakers. We also completely excluded killer questions, or the more difficult questions, and tried to distinguish test takers through materials from public education.
Starting off with the Korean language, the exam continued with math, English, and elective subjects. On the day of the test, most government offices and some companies pushed back their working hours to 10 a.m. And the Seoul Metropolitan Subway increased the number of trains running from 6 a.m. to 10 a.m.
Test results will be out on December 6th, but until then, now that Suneung is over, these test takers can relax and enjoy the various discounts being offered to them, recognizing their hard work and effort. An Sung-jin, Arirang News.
People in South Korea who suffered damage from North Korea's trash-carrying balloons will be eligible for government compensation. The National Assembly passed an amendment to the Civil Defense Act today, allowing full or partial compensation for hostile action that falls short of a civil defense emergency, such as war or national disasters. This change follows property damage experienced by some residents from the north sending filled carrying balloons over the border. The amendment will take effect 6 months after its official announcement, with compensation covering damages dating back to last May. The country's biggest annual game fair is underway. This year, G-Star not only showcases new releases from major companies, but also gives significant attention to indie games. Our Yoon brings the story.
The southern port city of Busan is making waves in the gaming world as the 2024 edition of G-Star, South Korea's largest gaming exhibition, kicked off on Thursday at Bexco Convention Center.
The energy here at the 2024 G-Star Fair is buzzing. Gamers, developers, and creators are all coming together to showcase the latest and greatest in gaming. From cutting-edge technology to brand new game releases, this is where the future of gaming truly comes alive.
This year marking the 20th edition, the event features more than 3,300 booths with over 1,000 game companies from 44 countries. Nexon, one of South Korea's gaming giants, is celebrating its 30th anniversary with a range of exciting games and events. Visitors can try new releases across 4 demo zones for PC, mobile, and console, and enjoy an exclusive gifting event where they can earn prizes by completing missions.
Every time I come, I have a great time exploring different games and experiences. But what I enjoy most is meeting my favorite streamers.
I've always loved games, and I guess that's what led me to enjoy cosplay as well.
Netmarble, another leading Korean gaming company, has announced its new Game of Thrones game, set for release early next year. G-Star attendees can get an exclusive first look.
Game of Thrones King's Road is an open-world action RPG being unveiled by Netmarble at G-Star. Based on the popular Game of Thrones series, the game lets players become the protagonist and interact with key characters while exploring hidden stories not seen in the show.
Steam, the world's largest game distribution platform, is not only making its debut at a Korean exhibition, but also showcasing unique and creative games from 60 indie developers. Under the theme Expand Your Horizons, G-Star 2024 also places a strong focus on indie games.
At first, the major game booths seemed just as flashy as the big corporations. But after checking out the indie games, I feel indie games often have stronger stories and more depth.
Alongside the game displays, a wide range of events are taking place, including the Global Game Conference and the Game Cosplay Awards. Throughout the 4-day event, visitors can explore all aspects of the gaming industry to see what's new and what's next for the future of gaming. Yoon, Arirang News, Busan.
Temperatures rose to around 20 degrees Celsius in the middle of the day today, which was the day of the Suneung test. However, it has started to rain in most parts of the country by the end of the test. Rain began in western areas and has gradually expanded across the country. This rain will continue until tomorrow morning. The warm autumn weather will continue. Tomorrow, both morning and daytime temperatures will be warm, exceeding the average temperatures. As the daily temperature range is large, please take care of your body temperature. Tomorrow, Chuncheon and Gyeongju will start off at 11 degrees Celsius, Jeju 18 degrees. Daily highs will move up to 21 in Daejeon, Gwangju, and Busan, Chuncheon 19 degrees. Cold air will move south from next week, and the morning temperatures in Seoul will drop below zero on Tuesday. That's all for Korea. Here are the weather conditions around the world.
That is Newscenter for tonight. Thank you for watching. A panel session up next.